But he's This is the Black Powder Podcast, coming at you live and direct.
Your salty tears season my life. It's the Black Powder Podcast.
Hello, my friends, and once again, you're with the Black Powder Podcast. I am Marcus Matthews, the only real libertarian on the only real libertarian podcast. And tonight, I have a very, very special co-host. I don't know where Tub is. Eric couldn't make it. He had family stuff. Tub was supposed to make it, and I had a perfect setup for this, right? I was going to say, as a gentleman I am, I'm going to introduce the ladies first, the co-host, and I was going to say, this is Tub. But he completely ruined my joke. I had set it up. I was like walking around between the kitchen and the living room, like, yeah, that's going to be funny. The Tub's going to be mad. And he missed out on my joke. I hope. Never mind. You know what? Without further ado, though, I would like to introduce my lovely co-host for tonight, Miss Amity Dolby from the great state of Florida.
Hello, Marcus, my favorite libertarian.
Awesome. You know what? It always does my heart well when you say that because it's true. Not only am I your favorite libertarian, I'm America's libertarian. I think
Yes,
I might
you are.
change my moniker to America's libertarian. So normally I interact with you on one of my favorite podcasts, the second best libertarian podcast, in my humble opinion. I know you'll tend to disagree with this one, from Are You Smarter Than a Politician, which apparently you're going to be a guest on tomorrow night. Are we not?
I am. It will be myself, Kyle Seraphin, former FBI and whistleblower, and Jake Day, our good friend who was Free's bodyguard in Las Vegas.
We have one of our second comment. Let's get to us first. What's up, y'all? How you doing, Amity? You know,
How
one of
you
your
doing?
fans. You know,
My
and then
biggest
we
fan.
have we have my guy Free. Do you want me to call? Yes, please. Actually, you know, because it's kind of troubling. You know, he said he was going to be on tonight. You know, I jumped in Free's DMs today because you had a nice little tweet there about how, you know, just reaching out to somebody could spark a love affair. So I reached out to Free today, jumped in his DMs. I didn't like my reply, but, you know, persistence is the key to life. And so I'm going to just keep jumping in there, seeing what happens. You know, what happens.
Well, he's taken, you know.
At any rate, you know, normally always we bring you great libertarian stuff, but normally we like to keep it local to local races, statewide and municipalities and all that good stuff. But today we're going to the great state of Ohio for a federal election, which I think is very interesting because this is a winnable race in my humble opinion, because we have a great candidate. And he has been called a statesman of the Libertarian Party. Somebody referred to him as the adult in the room libertarian and former chair of the Libertarian Party. So without further ado, I want to bring in our guest tonight, Mr. Bill Redpath. How you doing, sir?
All right, you have a studio audience there. That's wonderful. Anyway, yeah. So thank you for having me. I appreciate it, and thank you for the kind words.
No problem. Now, normally when we start off our podcast with a candidate, first of all, you're running for Senate in the state of Ohio, but how did you come to the Libertarian Party, and what what was the catalyst for your deciding to run as a libertarian? There was one more question, but
Well, I am running for U.S. Senate, and I always say U.S. because some people get confused. I mean, it's a lot of people. It's pretty easy for a lot of people to get confused about politics and various elections. So it's the U.S. Senate election in Ohio. This is a special election because there would not normally be a U.S. Senate election in Ohio this year, but because J.D.
Right.
Vance was elected vice president 2 years ago, then the governor appointed John Husted, who was previously the lieutenant governor, to the U.S. Senate, but he cannot finish out the final 4 years of Vance's term. They have an election for the final 2 years, and then this seat will be up again in 2028. What brought me to the Libertarian Party, I would say, discussed with the Republican Party and Ronald Reagan. There's an old saying, so old that nobody uses it anymore, that people join the Libertarian Party because of two issues, not the same two issues, their two issues. And when somebody said this to me, probably in the early 1990s, I said, that's right. I joined the Libertarian Party because of two issues. He says, what were your two issues? I said, Social Security and the drug war. And I realized by my mid-20s that Social Security was the program was a terrible ripoff for younger people. It still is. It's gotten worse, I think, in the maldistribution effects of wealth in this society, and the drug war. I mean, Ronald Reagan and his fellow drug warriors wanted to throw people I knew into jail, and they most certainly did not deserve that. They weren't harming I'm not sure they were harming themselves, but if they were harming anyone, it was just themselves. And so it was, I would say, discussed with the Republican Party. I never really was a Democrat. I disagree with Democrats on economic issues, and for the most part. And so I joined the Libertarian Party. LPHQ says April 30, 1984 was the date I joined. That seems about right. And why I'm running this year in Ohio, well, this is the 9th time I've been a candidate for public office. I did it 6 times in Virginia when I lived there. I lived in Northern Virginia from 1985 to 2019. I moved to Illinois for about 5 years, ran twice there for U.S. House in 2020, U.S. Senate in 2022. Then I moved to Ohio for personal reasons in the spring of 2025, and I knew of this U.S. Senate race. And I'm running because I can and thought I should, so I am. And I wanted there to be a libertarian voice in this election. I'm not making any claims as to that I'm going to win or I'm giving it my best shot, but looking at the discourse in this race and other federal races, other political races, I thought I couldn't hurt the discourse. I'll put it that way. So that's why I'm doing it. I think the Libertarian Party exists for the most part to speak out on the great issues of the day. And if that means running for offices that are very difficult for us to win, so be it. I'm not opposed to people running at the local level for more winnable races, but I think it's important to take a stand on the major issues of the day affecting this nation.
Awesome. Amity.
Yeah. So, Bill, before we get into your platform and your candidacy, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you a question about your work in ballot access, because I've known about your work for a long time. I worked in ballot access in Virginia since 2013. And so I'm just wondering, you've spent decades helping other libertarian candidates get on the ballot. What lessons have you learned from your years of, working on ballot access? And what made you decide that running for office as well is the right thing to do? And what lessons have you learned from the ballot access challenges that you've had that you could tell other candidates and the average voter?
Well, the ballot access is way too difficult in this nation. I mean, we hold ourselves out as the land of the free, but in the land of the free, it is way too difficult to start a new political party. I don't think ballot access is the worst thing. It's bad, but I think the thing that really props up the two old parties and their dominance on the U.S. political landscape is our voting system. And by that, I mean single member plurality voting, single member legislative districts, person with the most votes wins. And there was a French political scientist who lived to a very old age. Duverger was his name. There's something called Duverger's law, which means that such a voting system tends to lead to two dominant parties, and that's certainly what we've experienced. But leaving that aside, and I do think for the Libertarian Party or the Green Party or any other third party in the United States to truly succeed, we need to have some form of proportional representation for our legislatures in this nation. But then that's the biggest problem we face. But close behind is ballot access. And all I can say is that it's gotten easier. And this is according to Richard Winger. I serve as editor of Ballot Access News and ballotaccess.org. I'm doing less of that these days and have been in the recent past because of my U.S. Senate run here in Ohio. And that's pretty much a full-time endeavor. I'm retired from my career. But the ballot access laws for president have gotten somewhat easier. A good example is Virginia, where it used to be 10,000 valid signatures to get on the ballot for president. Now it's 5,000 valid signatures for candidates of parties that don't have ballot access in Virginia. Why did that happen? Because in 2011, the petitioning was done in 2011 for the 2012 Republican presidential primary in Virginia. Only Ron Paul and Mitt Romney made the ballot. I mean, most of the candidates didn't even make the ballot. And so they reduced the petitioning requirement to get on for primaries in Virginia. And then they also reduced it, to be fair, I'll give them credit, they reduced it for minor parties to equal the reduction. But it was truly embarrassing that only two major party candidates could jump over the ballot access hurdle in Virginia to make the GOP primary. And so I just think that I do wish what's really important out there is if you support a candidate or a party and you don't have ballot access, we need more people out there actually doing petitioning. We need more volunteers because it's the only way, like in New York right now, where they've tripled the petitioning requirement to get on as a party in New York. It's now 45,000 valid signatures during a 6-week period. It used to be 15,000 valid signatures. That was tough enough. They tripled the number of signatures and did not extend the time beyond a 6-week window to complete the petition drive. And I think that, frankly, the only way the LP is going to have a presidential ticket on the ballot in New York with this law, unless the law changes and makes it easier, is if we're going to get a widespread volunteer effort of a bunch of people going out to get 100 signatures or 150 signatures or 200 signatures over a 6-week period. We could overcome it, but it's going to take a far broader effort for more people out there getting signatures for us to get back on the ballot ever again for statewide candidates in New York State.
Well, that's one of the few things that Democrats and Republicans will always agree upon. One of the few things they will always agree upon, aside from war, spending money we don't have, it is keeping the system the same that brought them into power.
Mm-hmm.
While before we move on real quick, we're going to take a quick commercial break for everybody listening and watching and whatnot. And we're going to put up a link here. It's billredpath.com/donate. Now, when you talk about getting libertarians elected, we have to talk about money. And money is a very important factor in this because it means boots on the ground. It means yard signs. It means being able to hire people to go out there and get those signatures and all the other things associated with running for office. So $5, $10, $15, $20. The more the merrier, of course, but put your money where your means are, be based monetarily, and support good libertarian candidates. And we want to thank you to all those that are willing to donate tonight and in the near future when you go back and watch this, because this is going to be a riveting episode. First of all, you have me, and that's almost enough by itself. But we have somebody who's been in the Libertarian Party for 40 years, 40 plus years.
Over 40, yeah, 42.
Then we have the lovely Amity Dolby, who invented Dolby surround sound. Nobody knows that about
That was
her.
a distant cousin.
Nobody's ever heard that before. But I'm telling you, this is the person who created Dolby surround sound. So allegedly. So we want to get into your platform, and like I was telling you in the pregame, one of the problems I find with being a libertarian is people trying to tell you what a libertarian is instead of listening to libertarians tell you who they are. So before we get into your platform, can you tell the people who you are, like how you stand politically on the, I don't want to get into culture wars or anything like that. I think libertarians should avoid culture wars at all costs, because your culture is at your house. It's not out at somebody else's house. So what do you think a libertarian is?
I will get to that in just a moment. I didn't complete my thought on ballot access and left it hanging, and that was my fault. I talked about it. It's generally easier now to get on the ballot for president. Then I talked about the difficulties in New York, but down ticket, they've made it harder. State legislatures have made it harder to run for down ticket offices other than president over the years, and I just wanted to put that out there, that it's marginally harder than it used to be, I think, in the recent past. But your question then was, how do I define a libertarian?
Yes.
A libertarian stands for both economic freedom and personal freedom, and we think that people should be allowed to live their lives as they choose without interference, as long as they are not harming other people or their property. Consequently, we call for reduced government spending, reduced taxes. I would like to have no taxes, but I don't think that is feasible in the foreseeable future. And real respect for people's civil liberties. It's a live and let live philosophy. It's I sort of look upon it as the golden rule. When I grew up in the Methodist Church in Findlay, Ohio, they talked about the golden rule, and I think that's what libertarianism is. Ultimately, it boils down. Actually, all the rights kind of flow from one basic right with libertarianism, and that is the right to not be aggressed upon. The right to say no is very important as a function of liberty. So I would just say that. We believe in both economic freedom and personal freedom, and the slogan of my campaign is anything that's peaceful. Basically means that anything that's peaceful should be legal, and that's the core issue. And my specific positions pretty much flow from that.
Awesome. To you, Amity.
Yeah. So one of the things you mentioned in your platform is about repealing tariffs, and I'm with you on free trade. How do you balance protecting Ohio manufacturing while supporting free markets and international trade? I know there's a lot of industries in Ohio that are suffering. So speak a little bit about that.
Well, it appears that Donald Trump's tariffs have hurt manufacturing. I mean, the GDP number just came out today that talked about 1.5% real growth in GDP over the past year. That's pretty anemic. The tariffs have not helped gross domestic product in this nation. They just aren't doing it. And I think that unilateral free trade is the way to go. And I think that will benefit the greatest number of Americans and bring the greatest prosperity to the American people. I don't believe in protecting any jobs, manufacturing or service sector. You know, the service sector now accounts for about 80% of the jobs in the United States. And this is a normal development in an economy, in a modernizing economy over time. Just like agricultural jobs went away, there are still going to be some manufacturing jobs and a lot of manufacturing jobs. I don't think it's ever going to get down to the very low percentage of agricultural jobs in this nation. But I think it's a normal part of the process of a modernizing economy that service, and it's in other nations as well, the service sector grows larger and larger relative to manufacturing and agriculture. So I just don't think that protection of jobs is a good thing. What we ought to be embracing is economic freedom and an entrepreneurial spirit in this nation, and making sure people have the right to innovate. And that's what's going to bring the greatest prosperity to the greatest number of people in this nation over the long run.
Right. As you were saying that, I was thinking, because I always think of what were they called? Where they kept the horses in your state. It wasn't a stable, a stablery. Back in the day, where they would have, where we were using horse-drawn carriages.
Right.
That there was a whole industry around that. The people that went and pick up horse crap in the streets.
Right.
People that boarded the horses at night. They all lost their job with the invention of the internal combustion engine. That's
right.
life. And we have to embrace that instead of fighting it tooth and nail, because that stifles innovation and it stifles people from moving forward economically. Mm-hmm. And one of those things that also stifles, another thing on your platform that I wanted to ask you about, is the Iran war. Because I think that's one of the few issues right now that Americans are all pretty much on the same page.
Two-thirds are.
Yeah, this was not worth it.
No.
Because, there's whole generations. My children are 23 going on 24 and 21 going on 22. Their entire lifetime, the United States has been at war.
Yeah. Yeah. Afghanistan, for the most part. I don't know. I mean, I really can't explain Donald Trump's thinking here. He hasn't accomplished anything that he set out to do. There's no regime change. They haven't seized the uranium of Iran. The Strait of Hormuz now is closed, and now Iran wants to control the Strait of Hormuz going forward. This is the biggest blunder in U.S. foreign policy history. He's accomplished nothing that he wanted to do, and the world is, if this situation gets worse, if this actually breaks out into a full regional war, we're not out of the woods yet by any means. It's gotten worse over the last week or two, but we could be looking at a situation that badly affects the entire global economy. And so his advisors said, don't do it. Don't do this. And he did it because he thought it was going to be. Somebody said it regarding Donald Trump's psychology. He thinks everything will always turn out well. It'll turn out well. It'll be okay. We'll figure it out. And he's facing a situation now where that's not happening, and it's probably not going to happen. And I just read an article, I think it was in Foreign Policy magazine or foreignpolicy.com, I think, and said, the way out of this, how is this going to end? It's probably going to I don't know, but this author asserted that there's going to be a payoff from the United States, probably to Iran, to pay them off to open up the Strait of Hormuz. And if that's the case, and the regime stays in place, the theocracy, what a debacle. And aside from the deaths of service personnel there and injuries, and this couldn't be going any worse almost.
No, that death of that cute little Mexican girl from Texas.
Yeah, 19 years old.
When they put her face on TV, I was disgusted and mad.
Yeah,
because she died for nothing. And I hate to say it like that, but literally nothing, because a lot of Americans don't know. I hear this, we've been at war with Iran for 47 years. Why did it start 47 years ago? It's because the United States foreign policy to begin with.
Right.
And then we're right back in this damn debacle once again. And it just disgusts me to no end. Amity, did you want to touch on this or move on to your next?
Yeah, well, I mean, it kind of goes hand in hand. We're talking about war and the pointless nature of it, which includes, $1.5 trillion for the Department of War. And then now, they're asking for more on top of that. I have my debt badge sitting here that gives me heartburn. 39 trillion, 800 plus billion. Like, this is about to hit 40 trillion. And so, Bill, I'm just wondering, it doesn't matter if Democrats or Republicans are in office, Congress keeps spending, whatever president's in office keeps approving the spending and asking for more. What do you think is our solution? Can we get the debt reduced and give taxpayers relief at the same time? How do we solve that problem?
Well, first of all, regarding the debt device right there, so you actually have a device that keeps track of the national debt?
Yeah. So Thomas Massey engineered this, and
Okay.
and so it's
it's changing too fast. I can tell that.
Yeah. So it syncs up with the National Treasury, and so.
Okay. Well, if I may just comment on one thing, that's the gross federal debt. And I think economists, I know economists generally prefer the debt held by the public but that's bad enough. I mean, that's over $30 trillion. I think that's 31 or 32 trillion dollars. I'll tell you what makes me feel old. I'm 68. I looked at the debt of the debt held by the public of the U.S. government back when I first went to college. I graduated from high school in 1975. I went back and took a look. The outstanding federal debt in like the middle or the third quarter of 1975 was $411 billion. $411 billion 50 years ago or 51 years ago was the total outstanding debt of the
That's just a rounding error now.
Yeah, exactly. And in 1980, when I finished my formal education and went out into the real world, the actual spending, the actual federal budget was under $1 trillion. Okay, under 1 trillion. It was 800 billion or something like that spent per year. But I will say that I do think the debt, because if you have a corporation where you have different divisions owing each other money, that's all consolidated out when they have the consolidated financial statements. And so if you did that with the federal government, you'd have the debt held by the public, which is 31 or 32 trillion. So, but that, like I said, that's bad enough. And it's right about 100% of gross domestic product right now, and is projected to rise. There are a lot of things that could be done, and I think spending should be reduced. But the one thing we've got to do is talk about entitlements. We are not going to get a handle on this situation until we address Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. And because right now we are on a path where 10 years from now, 2036, 100% of the revenues of the federal government are going to be consumed by Social Security, Medicare, the federal part of Medicaid, and interest on the debt. Everything else would have to be borrowed. National defense, the court system, the this, the that, everything else would have to be borrowed. I mean, at some point, I know people have been hearing, and it's like, oh, things are good right now. And we've been hearing about, future problems with the government spending, government debt for a long time. But it's really getting bad now. And how long this can go on without some sort of, and we're probably facing the repercussions right now. Interest rates right now, the 30-year Treasury yield is the highest it's been since 2007, right? 19 years now. It's at what, 5.2, 5.3%, something like that. It's over 5%. And so we may not have a debt crisis, although it's I don't know what's going to happen. It's possible, but we could just be in for a long period of relatively stagnant economic growth that's going to hurt the prosperity of the vast majority of Americans.
Okay, I want to get to first of all, I want to get to this question by our producer Joe Hanush. Thank you, Joe, for everything you do for this show. Always booking great guests. I want to encourage everybody else.
I served on the national committee with, by the way. Thank you, Joe.
Everybody else, I want to encourage you to ask your questions to Bill Redpath or to Amity. You shouldn't have any questions from me because I'm too good for most of you people anyway.
Okay.
At any rate, I'm just kidding. I'm good enough for you people.
Okay.
You people.
And so I want to get to this because you said Ronald Reagan was one of the reasons you became a libertarian. And Joe Hanusha, didn't Reagan triple the debt in his term?
I didn't mean that as a compliment to Reagan. Right. Mind you. I mean, it was discussed with him. I don't know about tripling the debt. Maybe that's true, but certainly that's when the major deficits really kicked in, was during the Reagan administration. No question about that.
He said deficits didn't matter. I remember.
That was Dick Cheney. I don't know that Reagan. I don't think Reagan said that. I could be wrong, but Dick Cheney definitely said that.
Yeah, I thought it was. That was one of the things I remember from my childhood. And then there was one thing you had mentioned, and I understand when people call it that, but when the government takes my money out of my paycheck without my permission for Social Security and Medicare, I really don't see that as an entitlement. I see that as extortion.
Well, entitlement is a technical term.
Right.
Entitlement is it means that basically the spending is on autopilot based on past legislation, and it's going to continue that way until the law is changed. It's not something that is re-upped. Of course, the whole budgeting process on Capitol Hill is kind of a mess anyway. But it's a technical term that basically means that spending is on autopilot until further action is taken by Congress.
All right, we have another question right here. Bill, are you?
No, it's a 1 liter. It's not a 2 liter. It's a 1 liter. Am I drinking? Yes, I'm drinking right out of the bottle. Yes, I apologize for being so uncouth.
I mean, that's a real American.
Some silly
right
friends
there.
in the chats.
Don't tell my doctors. By the way, I have some bottled water here. I'm supposed to be drinking more water and less, but a little caffeine and sugar rush at 9:33 p.m. Eastern time helps me get through this.
All right, I got fact checked by my fellow Californian. Even though he lives north of Santa Barbara, which I call South Oregon, everything north of Santa Barbara, he said indeed it was Dick Cheney who said deficits don't matter. And Dick Cheney was Reagan's defense secretary.
I think so.
I believe so.
I think so, but he goes back. I mean, he served under Gerald Ford too. I mean, he goes way back.
He was a alligator because he was right there in the swamp with everybody else. So, Amity, what do you got?
Well, while we're still talking about spending, I'm just curious. Congress passes these massive omnibus bills that have so much pork in them, and spending that's unrelated to anything that we, the taxpayers, actually think is necessary, if anything is necessary at all at the federal level. Do you support single item bills so that we can have transparent 1 or 2 page spending bills where the American people know what's in them? And do you think that's ever going to be possible with Congress?
Probably not in the foreseeable future possible with Congress. I just think that the scope of government just needs to be cut back so much, and this situation where they have these mammoth bills that read the bills. I mean, how could anybody read these bills? And they're so technical in terms of the language. I'm not sure that it would, if you just read it and you read every word, that it would all make sense. You could all put it in a proper context. So the real thing is to simply cut back the scope of government, and certainly grants. One of the areas that need to be cut back are grants to state and local governments. I'll give you an example. I lived from 2019 to early 2025, 5.5 years. I lived in the Chicago metro area. Federal grants. I mean, I on the commuter trains, which I took every once in a while, Metra in the Chicago area, and they'd have these magazines at the stations, and you pick one up, and you see this U.S. senators, Dick Durbin and Tammy Duckworth, crowing about federal grants to Metra. And so people from all over the nation were helping to subsidize commuter rail in the Chicago metro area. In the meantime, frankly, in my opinion, they were underpricing tickets on this. I rode one day down to a Bears game from Barrington downtown to Chicago and back home for like $7, a $7 round trip. And it was ridiculous. I mean, that trip is easily worth double that or more. So in that case, I will tell you that the commuter rail, in my opinion, was horribly underpriced to its users. And then they're calling on government in Springfield or Washington to subsidize their losses. And this sort of thing needs to be analyzed more closely and stopped. But the federal grant situation is out of control and needs to be trimmed back severely. That's another area where I think some easy cuts could be made if we just had the political will.
Well, I'll be in Chicago next week, so now I'm going to feel like I have ownership when I get on the
go get some of that money back for the federal government.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah. I don't blame you one bit for moving away from Chicago, because I know a guy from there, and I find him to be fair to adequate in general.
That's my guy you're talking about.
He's fair to adequate. All right. I haven't heard that in a description for a person before. Okay.
That's one of my work colloquialisms that I tell people. I tell them all the time. I think, hey, I just want you to know you're doing a fair to adequate job here, and I really appreciate that.
Which ranks higher, fair or adequate? Which ranks higher than the other?
I would say adequate, because fair has many branches that you could break off on.
Okay.
But I want to again encourage anybody, if you have any questions for Bill, please post them. We're going to take a quick commercial break. Once again, it is billredpath.com/donate. Are you tired of Democrats and Republicans telling you how to live your life? Do you want a clear choice that is concerned about your liberty, your family, and your well-being by not having the government intrude on none of those things? billredpath.com/donate. $5, $10, $15, $20, whatever you can give, that will give liberty a place in our government. And we want to thank you in advance for your generous donations. And without further ado, let's get back to the podcast. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Marcus.
All right. So, I'm going to put Amity, as she is the super guest host tonight, I'm going to put her back on the spot with another question. Go ahead, Amity.
Yeah, so I'm just curious, with your background, what Senate committee would you want to serve on?
Oh, wow. Anyone they'd put me on. Senate Banking Committee, Senate Appropriations Committee. I think definitely something financial, but I would gladly serve on any committee. But and that's a question I really haven't contemplated. I need to, I've got to put this on my to-do list. I need to take a look at the list of committees and contemplate, their role in the U.S. Senate and what they'd be like to serve on. I really haven't contemplated that.
And your background is in economics, is that right?
Yeah, I got a bachelor's degree in economics and political science from Indiana University in Bloomington, and then went to the University of Chicago and got an MBA degree there. So, right, I'm still have a license. I still have an active CPA license in both Ohio and Illinois. But if anybody would actually hire me as an accountant, they'd have to have their head examined. I mean, I haven't worked as an accountant since 1985. But what I did do then, from 1985 to 2023, I did business valuation work in media and telecommunications. So I did financial work, but I didn't work as an accountant. And I did a lot of litigation support work in where I testified at trials and was deposed and matters like that. But a lot of other valuation of businesses, intangible assets, tangible assets. I was sort of a jack of all trades, probably master of none. But anyway, that's what I did for 38 years.
Right. So we got a question again from the great Joe Hanus, the hardest working man in the Libertarian Party, in my humble opinion. Libertarians are right on so many big issues of today. How do we get the everyday American voter to know we are the political party to support and vote for?
I think just by stating that the problem is ultimately our voting system. They're not voting for someone. I'm sure the vast majority of people under the current voting system go to vote against someone.
Yeah.
That's the attraction. And we need a multi-party system in this nation so that people will more easily find a political party to vote for. If we had proportional representation in the United States, the Libertarian Party would be a major party. I don't think we'd be the major party, but we'd be a major party, perhaps the third largest, perhaps the it's tough to say, but I think that I do think libertarians are a political minority because people are just so used to a large welfare state, even though it's not as large as it is in other nations. But it just sort of seems as if that more as prosperity increases, as a nation becomes wealthier, there's a significant slice of the people in those nations that want the government to control a lot of the resources for what they think are good reasons. So I just think we have to recruit and run good candidates for office, make our best arguments possible, marshal the facts, but I think ultimately it is the voting system that sort of keeps us down, and the R's and D's propped up and incentivizes people to vote against someone as opposed to voting for someone.
Right. So I want to get to, I know him, Chris. He doesn't give me that many points on Are You Smarter Than a Politician? So I shouldn't actually give him a platform, but I'm going to anyway because he has a good question for you. Bill, if elected, would you be a whistleblower to the corruption you'd be approached with?
Well, I don't know that I'd be approached with corruption. I mean, I think that it sort of reminds me when Ron Paul was in the U.S. House, and certainly people have a right to lobby, but we have to put people in there to say no to the lobbyists or to the vast majority of them, and the special interests. And when Ron Paul was in the U.S. House, what I heard from people who worked for him or knew him at the time was that the lobbyists just sort of stopped coming by. You know, they knew what he was going to say, so why come and hear it when you can try to influence a more malleable legislator? So I think that, that's the problem right now is that ideologies, frankly, kind of run short on Capitol Hill these days, and certainly the free market libertarian ideology is in short supply up there. So I would just hope that I could be as honorable and forthright in saying no to special interests as Ron Paul was.
Now, before I get back to Amity, I just want to say the reason why I said I think you have a good chance of making some waves in this election is because I see a lot of discontent with the Republican nominee for governor, Vivek Ramaswamy.
Mm-hmm.
He was booed today trying to tell Americans what an American is. I'm not a big fan of his. I'll be forthright in that because I don't think he's had a real American experience, because he is a first generation American that grew up with a silver spoon. And when you're telling people who've had a hard strapped life on how easy it is just to get to where he is in life, I don't think that's relatable in a sense that most Americans cannot share that story. They had to proverbially pull themselves up by their bootstraps and do a lot of things to get to a successful position, whereas he had a very significant seed money to start what he was doing to eventually become a billionaire. And that's why I was saying earlier that the best way towards wealth in America right now is by property and building wealth, and you pass that to your family, and you ensure your family has a means to survive in a multifaceted, ever-changing economy. Well, we're not ever-changing, but we're at an economy that's changing right now. But have you had any body in Ohio when you go out there and talk to the people that were wrong or thinking about voting for Republican ask you any interesting questions?
Yeah, it's it's about the war. It's about spending. Yes, Don Kissick for governor of Ohio. Yes, absolutely. And that's our ballot access race. We for the Libertarian Party, if I may say,
yeah,
we have to get 3% of the vote for governor. And I think we can do it because there's a lot of discontent here with both Amy Acton, the Democrat, and Vivek Ramaswamy. I think that people are concerned about the debt, and they're really open. I mean, the thing is that they'll ask me what I'm about, and I'm surprised at the good response I get about unilateral free trade. Not everyone, of course, but they go, well, yeah, that makes sense. And given a moment and talking about how imports are the real benefit, we export in order to import. We want to consume goods and services, not have people in other nations consume goods and services. And if you sort of break it down and talk about how free trade is, it's not us versus them, the United States versus that nation. It's people and private organizations cooperating over international borders in free trade. And this, I've found, resonates with a lot of people once you are able to talk with them about that. But with respect to the governor's race, it doesn't matter. I mean, even if I would win election to the U.S. Senate or not, that doesn't matter for our retention of ballot access for the LP in Ohio. It's getting 3% of the vote for governor. And I sure hope Don Kissick can do that. And I think he will.
Yeah, I don't think enough Americans understand truly the historical nature of nationalism and when you apply it to economic policy. So that's one of the things that saddened me, is another reason why we should abolish public education, because it has failed so many Americans terribly, it's particularly in imparting critical thinking skills.
Well, it's certainly, yeah, I certainly think the federal government should not be involved in education at all. And I think that it should be handled by the states and local governments and private institutions. I think you need to, on the matter of education, separate the issue of finance from school operation. I think that we definitely have a need to have an educated populace, but so I'm open to various issues, considerations with respect to financing schools, but I don't think government has any business operating schools. I think we'd be so much better off if we had a more competitive marketplace with if people want to homeschool, fine. I mean, I don't have any children. I will say that if I had children, assuming the responsibility, having a job and a career and all that, and assuming responsibility for educating my kids, I don't know about that. I mean, I'd rather have.
It's tough, but it's rewarding.
Okay, and so I would rather farm that out to somebody or I could trust, or an organization I could trust, who could put full time into it. That would have been my preference if I'd had children. So, but that's what we need. We need a competitive marketplace here in terms of education, so badly in this nation.
Yeah, very limited options. Yeah, Amity, did you want to expand on that, or you want to move?
No, I agree with everything you said. I mean, parents should have the option to educate their children as they see fit, and whether that's a community school or a charter school, or hiring a private tutor or homeschooling. Like you said, the federal government should stay out. I think the Department of Education is one of those leeches that just funnels money from us that I don't think is necessary.
It's a very easy cut. I mean, it's one of the easiest cuts in the federal budget right now. this whole situation. I mean, if we can't end the Department of Education, which we didn't have until the late 70s.
Yeah, it's a Carter
I mean,
thing.
what hope do we have with the inevitable tougher decisions that we'll be faced with?
Right, absolutely. And, Marcus touched on another issue. You mentioned nationalism. Another thing that we hear polar opposites from Democrats and Republicans right now is the immigration issue, where you have one side screaming, deport them all, and, propping up ICE and federalizing the police system or the police service. And then the other side where, people want a welfare state to support people who have come in. Is there a balance there? Can we get away from both extremes and find some sort of immigration policy that works?
I think that the presumption should be one of liberty. And unless I agree with, as I say on my website, I agree with Alex Naresta of the Cato Institute that I've said that if somebody doesn't have a serious communicable disease, and if they cannot reasonably be deemed a security threat, and they do not have a criminal background, they ought to be able to come to the United States. And definitely, yes, we cannot have an open welfare system, but we could work it where, private businesses could sponsor people coming in. There's a shortage of workers out there. I just read, now there's the fear that the Trump administration is going to deport a bunch of Haitians. And I will give a shout out here to Mike DeWine, the governor of Ohio, who just yesterday or the day before said that would be a mistake. To deport the Haitians in Ohio would be a mistake. I just saw a news story a couple of weeks ago about a manufacturer, I believe he's in Springfield, Ohio, and he has many Haitian employees. And he said, I wish I had 30 more. He said they show up for work on time. They're not on drugs. They do good work. And I'm really going to be hurting if these people are suddenly hauled away back to Haiti. And right now, the Trump, I just read where the Trump administration now wants, like after foreign students have studied at our universities, I think he wants to, they can stay if they pay $100,000 to the United States government. And no, that's wrong. We need people who are going to be credits to our society. And that doesn't mean necessarily educated. I mean, you can have people working on landscaping crews, but we need people who are going to work and behave peacefully in this nation and be a part of the American economy. And if they want, they'll assimilate. People, the vast majority of immigrants do assimilate. If they want to have their own culture, fine. Okay, that's fine. As long as they behave peacefully and are not a drag on our economy, then we should have a much more open immigration system than what we've got. It's the humane thing. It is the greatest anti-poverty program the world has ever known. There's a paper that I've read by the economist Michael Clemens, and I quote him on my issues page. It talks about that he thinks that if there were open immigration in the world, that gross world product, not gross domestic product, gross world product would be 50 to 150% higher than what we have today. So it's the humane thing to do, and ultimately, I think it will benefit the vast majority of Americans who are already here.
Totally agree.
Two things on that I wanted to expand on. I work in education. Everybody knows what I do for the most part. I've spoken with teachers, and the overwhelming consensus is first generation kids of immigrants are some of the best behaved and the most respectful and eager learners at the whole school versus the normal American kids, if that's what you want to call them, because they come with a sense of pride in what they do and a sense of wanting to belong and be better, because generally their parents are working menial jobs. Secondly, the only thing that the late Dianne Feinstein ever did that I agreed with and I hate saying I agreed with her on anything because I found her to be one of the most annoying politicians of my lifetime, is she posted agricultural job openings at the California EDD, which is our unemployment department, for people to Californians to take these jobs in the Central Valley, picking fruit and vegetables and stuff like that. Not one American applied for those jobs. Not one. And if you understand how much California grows for the rest of the nation, you need to understand there needs to be workers. As long as robotics can't do it right now, which probably in 100 years it will be able to do it. But as it stands right now, we don't have Americans willing to do those jobs.
Right.
The only common sense thing is to have a work program for people who want to come do that. I'm not saying give them citizenship or anything like that, but they can be contributors to this economy. And there's a big court fight about birthright citizenship, and those things are naturally going to happen if you bring in people that they're going to have kids.
Wow.
So this is something, it's complicated, but it's not the way I see it. We need those workers.
Right. And immigrants have a lower incarceration rate than native-born Americans. They are paying into, they're help propping up Social Security and Medicare. They're paying payroll taxes, but taking very little out of those programs. So there's a positive fiscal impact to the United States government from this. So it's just, at the end of the day, let people come here if they want to, for a better life for themselves. It's the humane policy. And again, we have so many businesses right now that are hurting for workers. So it's I just think it's the wisest policy right now.
Right on. So as we're going to start closing this out, because I know you East Coast people are getting sleepy, especially old guys like Free.
Yeah, right.
Old guys like me. Yeah, it's getting toward my bedtime, huh?
No, he's making fun of my boyfriend again. His name's Free. So.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to let Amity get her last questions, comments in for you, and then I'll wrap mine up, and then we'll we'll let everybody know how they can get in touch with you and help you out with stuff. So go ahead, Amity.
Yeah, I mean, you've been with the party for so many decades, and you've run for several offices. I'm just curious, if Ohio voters remember just one thing about Bill Redpath and the Libertarian Party after your campaign is over, what do you hope it'll be?
I hope they are glad I was a part of the debate this year, that I added something to the debate. If they don't elect libertarians, I want them to miss us. I hope they miss us when we're not there, and kept off the ballot by the ballot access laws. So I just hope that even if they don't vote for me, even if I'm not elected to the U.S. Senate, and I'm a third party candidate, I've been through this drill several times before, but at the end of the day, that they think that I represented the libertarian perspective well and with honor, and I'd like them to remember me for that.
Great, thank you.
Okay, we have a comment here. I don't know what all this, I'm not with all you youngsters, Amity //U002. I don't know what all that means. Are you going to be at Midwest August 6th to the 9th at Lake Satoshi, Michigan?
Yes. The reason we're flying into Chicago next week is because then we're going to drive to Lake Satoshi, Michigan for Midwest Peace and Liberty Festival. It's August 6th through 9th. And Free and I are both speakers on Friday night. And then he's doing the game show live, Are You Smarter Than a Politician, on Saturday. And so that'll be fun. And then we're going to head back to Chicago and hang out with some of his family and go see a Sox game.
Yeah, that's why Bill Redpath left Chicago, by the way. Again, I just want everybody to know that, because of Free.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Enjoy the Sox game. I have a warm, I used to live on, I used to live on the south side of Chicago when I went to the University of Chicago, and went to a lot of White Sox games at the old Comiskey Park, and a few at their current ballpark when I lived out there, for the past 5 or 6 years. But I have a warm, they're in first place right now. I have a warm spot in my heart.
Yep, they are. They're doing great.
They're doing very well compared to the recent past. They're doing, I used to joke, who wouldn't want to live forever except if you're a Chicago White Sox fan? And but they're doing amazingly well this year.
Yep.
All right. And for me, Bill, I just want to ask you, what do you tell those undecided voters? I find them very interesting creatures to begin with. How could you not be decisive on how the failures of the duopoly, the Democrat and Republican Party, have failed Americans over and over again, and you expect different results, which is the literal definition of insanity? But I digress. How do you sell yourself on those undecided voters? I
just say that I'm different than both of them. That you're, on one hand, with the incumbent, you've got somebody, if you're dissatisfied with Donald Trump, John Husted is going to back up Donald Trump, 98% plus % of the time, near as I can tell. I just don't see how, if you're disgusted with Donald Trump, you could vote Republican in this race. On the other hand, with respect to Sherrod Brown, he's a progressive who I would agree with him probably on some social issues, but the economics, I'm tired of class war. I'm tired of talking about, the working class, this and that. We need a free market economy that is going to work best for the most people over the long run, for all people, not just people of a particular class. And we've got to get government spending under control, or we're going to suffer a long, slow of the prosperity of this nation, or a debt crisis. And I just see no prospect of restraint in spending with Sherrod Brown. And it's important to, I think it's important to vote your conscience, and to vote in a way that shows, when you vote for a minor party candidate, you are casting a vote. You're saying, I want a multi-party political system in this nation. That's the real thing people want now. So many people, more people are describing themselves as independents. Just saw a poll, 45% describe themselves as independents, 27% for the Democrats and Republicans. So they're not satisfied, and by voting for a minor party candidate or an independent, you're stating that you want a change, a core change to the way politics and elections are run in this nation. And that message is an important, long run, forward-looking message that people can, a message they can send out by not voting R or D. Word. All right, so we're gonna wrap this up, and I'm gonna ask each one of you how to get in touch, where to follow you, what are you doing next, that type of thing. We're gonna do ladies first. Tub isn't here, so I have to skip him and go straight to Amity. So how do people follow you? What are you doing next? And what's basically going on with you?
Yeah, well, first I just want to thank Bill for coming on, and I had a great time having a conversation with you. I've been an admirer of yours for many years, and so I appreciate that. And everybody can find me on X at AmityLee13. And as I alluded to just a minute ago, we'll be at the Midwest Peace and Liberty Festival, August 6th through 9th in Lake Satoshi, Michigan. So come out and see us.
And what are you doing tomorrow night?
Oh, shoot. Thank you for reminding me, because I'd hear it later. So I will be on Are You Smarter Than a Politician? Yesterday was my 1-year anniversary from the first time I appeared on the show. And the rest, as they say, is history. And I'll be on tomorrow night with Kyle Seraphin and Jake Day, and of course, the wonderful, talented, and handsome Free, our host.
Wow. I don't even know why you had to ruin that grand moment with that last part, but okay. Bill, how do they get in contact with you, and what are you doing next?
Well, tomorrow and Saturday, I will be meeting people at the Butler County Libertarian Party of Ohio Fair booth down there. And so I've got, that's down in Hamilton, Ohio, just north of Cincinnati. I live up in the Toledo area. So tomorrow I'll be driving about 3 hours down to Hamilton, Ohio. And I'll be working that the next couple of days. And then how to get a hold of me or reach me, BillRedpath.com is my website. And at Bill Redpath on X. And I'm on Facebook, Bill Redpath for U.S. Senate, I think, or Bill Redpath for Senate, one or the other. And okay. Yeah. And anyway, so that's it. But certainly through my my email address, bill@billredpath.com. And anyway, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's been great. And hopefully we'll see each other down the road.
That's the plan. And I want to thank you very much for coming on, because you've been very insightful. And like I said, one of my missions in life is to have libertarians define themselves, not the wild stuff on social media. And I think you did a great job defining what a real libertarian is. I'm the only real libertarian. So we're not going to
that, Marcus,
those boundaries. But you are I'll give you an honorary real libertarian tab for your campaign and your future endeavors.
Okay.
So if anybody ever questions you, you can refer back to me and that to let them know. I appreciate it. Amity as well. I want to thank you so much for jumping in. I told Free earlier this week, Bill, I don't know how familiar you are with Wu-Tang Clan, but they have a grand gaggle of personalities, and that's what I want this podcast to be, is a bunch of libertarian personalities that, like I said, show people who we are. We're regular people. We're not trying to make you eat foreign substances and go on imaginary expeditions with us off some sort of hallucinogen. But that's cool if you want to. But yeah, let's do no harm is the number one thing.
Right.
So Wu-Tang is for the children. I appreciate that comment. Without further ado, I'm going to start to sign this out, and I want to thank everybody who listened and watched today. Thank you, Joe Hanush. Thank you, Free, for reaching out to Amity. Joe Hanush for reaching out to Bill. Thank you, Bill, for changing your schedule, because we had you last week, but it was a weird week last week. So thank you very much for being flexible. This has been the Black Powder Podcast. Amity, do you know how we end this show?
I do, Marcus.
Okay, because I'm going to count on you to jump in here better than Eric and Tub do. But this has been the Black Powder Podcast. As we always say as we end it, live free
or die.